Hey you, how's it going? My name is Ruby Price and I have an update for you from my 30 before 30 bucket list. So I mentioned in a video at the start of the year I had a couple of these videos to actually make and update you on, and I'm finally getting around to it. I'm really sorry I had a very busy February, a very busy January in fact, and I'm looking like I'm having a very busy rest of the year, but you know, I guess I found some time to sit down and film a video. I found some time to sit down and film a couple of videos actually, just to be frank. Yeah, to return to being Ruby, I have a couple of things that I need to make videos about, so I'm going to be making a couple of videos about it. So the aspect of my 30 before 30 that I'm going to be talking about today is one that you pretty much got to see progress during the 2019 stage of my vlogging series a week ago. And as you can see from the title of this video, I passed my driving test. I'm not really sure how, but I did it. In fact, because it was documented across a week ago, that means I can do this. In half an hour, I've got my first ever driving lesson. So, that should be fun. We're gonna see if I can actually get the car moving. So I just finished my first driving lesson, which was crazy. Crazy. Yeah. So far I've learned a lot of the basic maneuvers, and now it's just sort of sticking them together to do more complicated things. There's a lot in there about mirrors and signals and stuff like that. I think I did really well today, yeah. We were focusing a lot more on mirrors and stuff, and I had to pass a car. I got passed by a few cars as well. We were doing mini roundabouts, and yeah, I seemed to be pretty comfortable with them. Funnily enough, it was a junction that I fucked up on this week. You know, junctions that I did a couple of weeks ago. You know, it happens to the best of us. Oh, that was such a good driving lesson. We did 2 hours, junctions, left hand, right hand. We stopped maybe 3 times in the whole thing, and yeah. Fucking hell. I think I've really got the hang of it now. My only real issue is just more consistency. I can do everything, you know, as long as I don't mess up, I'm okay. I just need to, you know, get it so that I can, when I do it, it does it, if that makes any sense whatsoever. Let's go do some parallel parking. Got back from my driving lesson, which was really good, really productive, yeah. What we're doing. Even though it's not on the test anymore, they're still required to teach the 3-point turn, the turn in the road, whatever you want to call it. So I did that, and then I did pulling up and reversing to the right. Yeah, and then just drove around a bit to do some, you know, just being comfortable in the car. So yeah, it's been a fairly productive day. Now that's what I call a transition timeline. I'm sorry, I had to say it. It was right there. So in order to go from not being able to drive to being able to drive, I used a company called LDC, obviously not Spawn, but recommended. And what really helped through that process was this book that I was given before my very first driving lesson. It was full of information like this that just sort of simplified everything down so that I could see step by step what I would be doing in the next lesson. It gave me the opportunity to, you know, make notes and, you know, fully reflect on what it was that I'd learnt in the lessons, and things that I would not quite reflect, but the opposite of reflect, and talk about what I was expecting to get out of the next lessons and stuff like that. And honestly, I don't think that I would have done anywhere near as well in my actual practical driving test when it came round to it as I did without the assistance of this book. So that's a big bonus. Obviously as well, the person who I had as my instructor massively paid off. LDCs and Blackburn, you were fantastic. I'm really grateful that you were my driving instructor. If I started panicking, she could get through to me and sort of get me to just alright, cool, relax, ground yourself in the situation that you're in, figure out not what went wrong, but how to make it right. And that ultimately as well impacted on my driving test, because as I will tell you later, things went wrong. Things really went wrong. I was learning to drive for nearly a year, which did rack up quite the expense. The lessons were £25 an hour, which, you know, when you're doing hourly lessons every week and then some lessons have to be more than an hour, it, you know, really does tend to rack up. And as someone who has been technically unemployed since September. Yeah, the first term of uni was pretty difficult financially to also justify driving, but yeah, that's another reason why having the perfect instructor like paid off, because she understood my circumstances and was fully able to, you know, adapt what was probably supposed to be like a 2-hour driving lesson into a 1.5-hour driving lesson, so it was, you know, somewhat cheaper. So I passed my theory and my hazard perception in October, I think it was. In order to pass the theory test, you have to get 43 out of 50, and to pass the hazard perception, you have to get 44 out of 75. I spent about 2 solid weeks just revising in every spare second of time I had. I paid for the official DVSA theory and hazard perception test app, which really helped because it just allowed me to do loads of little mock tests around every single area. When I first started doing them, I was getting 40, 42, 43, around that area, and then the more that I did them, just the better I sort of became, and I managed to get 350 out of 50s the day before my theory test. So yeah, I was feeling confident going in about the theory test. The hazard perception though, I did not do as well on. I got 51 out of 75, so that's a lot closer to not actually passing it. The earlier you click and recognise the hazard, the more points you get, but then if you click too early, then you get 0, unless you click it again, but like there's a problem with clicking more times, so therefore you would then be disqualified points. So you can see where the problem is in terms of just clicking no matter how many times that you've clicked. But I passed it, and that's all that matters, which meant I could take my practical driving test. When it came to the day of doing it, I was a little bit nervous. You know, it's not the kind of thing you can just revise for in your own home, unless you happen to have like a car simulator or something. I ain't no F1 driver. So yeah, I was very nervous, but my driving instructor came to pick me up on the day about an hour before we were supposed to be at the test centre, which meant that we could just do a little bit of driving around and get me in the zone for driving. So then when I was actually doing the test, I was obviously driving with someone who I'd never met before. There was a couple of, you know, like icebreaker questions, like, you know, what would you be doing if you weren't doing it today? I was like, oh, I'd be in uni doing my masters. But then I also moved on to just carry on talking with this person so that I would be able to just sort of, you know, relate to them a bit more, humanise them. You know, like we spoke about music. This person's favourite band was Queen, and I was like, got a friend in a Queen tribute band, you know, yeah. Which is, you know, quite a conversation piece in itself, but yeah, the manoeuvre that he had me, you know, repeat was the pull up on the side of the road and reverse back and then get going again. I struggled a bit going uphill using my gears because it was a really steep hill, and it was just almost like the car just couldn't get the momentum. And I think that was mostly down to me, like, trying to go to gear 2 a little bit too quickly. So I went back to gear 1, and then, you know, I tried to go back to gear 2, and it was time. I just couldn't get my gearing right. So, you know, that was a bit of an issue. And then came the bit where I thought I'd failed it. Yeah, this bit really, really hit me whilst I was doing the driving test. I was coming around a ring road, and he wanted me to get into the left-hand lane, and I was in the middle lane. The problem was there was no gap in order to drive into the left lane, and there was no gap emerging, so, you know, I had to just keep waiting whilst driving around this middle lane. But the other problem is, this lane isn't straight, this lane is curved. So I'm focusing almost entirely on looking left and in the mirrors for a gap to appear, to the extent that I start drifting right, as you've probably guessed by the way that I'm telling this story. This was the bit that really, really, you know, got me, because I knew that I was doing something really on the borderline of failing. So I'm coming around and I'm focusing on the left because I want to get into the left lane. And then all of a sudden I realise how far right I'm drifting. I don't quite cross the line. I was very fortunate in that, because I feel like if I'd not realised any sooner, I would have crossed the line, and that would have definitely caused me to fail. I'm still trying to get into the left-hand lane, and then a gap opens up. And I notice this gap. My attention is entirely on this gap, so I don't notice the fact that the cars ahead have stopped. Do you see what I'm getting at? So, I stop the car. I'm 3/4 of the way into this left-hand lane that I have needed to be in for a good minute and a half at least. And then I realised how close I came to crashing the car, how close I came to crossing the lines. And honestly, the thing that I'm most grateful for is the fact that I realised everything and stopped the car myself. Because as soon as the instructor decides to go for that brake, that's when you fail. And I'm sat in the car thinking, I've just fucked everything over. I've just ruined my driving test. So my breathing gets quicker, my head is all over the place, but I ground myself in the scenario. I take charge of the fact that I haven't crashed, get going again, and then we head back to the test centre. And at this point, my examiner says, do you want to know how you've done? And then he says that I've passed. To go from, oh fuck, I've completely fucked this up, to, holy shit, you've got to be joking, I've passed? Yeah, I was so happy I couldn't actually walk around the car to then get in and have my instructor drive me to the university. But I passed, and that's what matters. As I assume all driving instructors do when their student passes. We got this photo taken. It's a very stereotypical, I've passed my driving test photo, but I haven't posted this anyway yet, purely just because I've been waiting to get this video sorted, and it's here now. Yeah. Look at it. I passed my driving test. So, that is another one ticked off the 30 before 30 list. Have you passed your driving test? Do you want to learn to drive? What's your attitude towards driving? Obviously, we're currently in a very environmentally aware society at the minute. Well, at least I'd like to think we're getting to that stage, if we aren't there already. Would you only drive if it was an electric car? Would you only drive if it meant that it had zero impact on the environment? Do you refuse to drive because of the impact that driving cars has on the environment? Let's get a conversation going in the comments. Let me know what you think. If you enjoyed this video, do all that generic YouTuber stuff, like, share, comment, subscribe. As always, I have been Ruby Price, and I shall see you next time. Adios. Bye.